What is up with nutrition labeling anyway? Is it something that you need to do? Are there new requirements? How do you do it properly and avoid the mistakes that so many people make? I get this question a lot, and it was asked enough, and someone asked me to do a special video just on nutrition facts panels and how to do it correctly. So here we go. For the best packaged food advice, please subscribe to the Food Business Success channel by clicking the link below and clicking on the bell to be notified every time I release a brand new video. In this video, I'm going to tell you whether you need to actually put the nutrition facts panel onto your label, what you need to know about it to be compliant, some of the rules that are changing, and some of the mistakes that you definitely want to avoid. Hey there, I'm Sari Kimbell. I am the creator of Food Business Success, and I have helped hundreds of packaged food business entrepreneurs just like you start and grow their packaged food business and get them onto the shelves of major retailers across the country. I would love for you to comment below and let me know what kind of packaged food or drink business you are thinking about launching or growing, and the delicious ideas you are cooking up in your kitchen. All right, let's start with a little bit of context first. So 4 years ago, the FDA announced major changes, the biggest changes that we've seen in the past 20 years about the nutrition facts panel. So I'm sure you know exactly what I'm talking about, but it's this label here on every food product and drink product that tells you the nutrition facts. So this is changing significantly, and the two major changes that I'm sure you've started to see already are the sheer size of the label, including font sizes. They're much larger now. And also the addition of having to declare any added sugars. Those are probably the two largest things that are changing, as well as the inclusion, and they took away some nutrients that you need to declare as well. So the first question that I usually get is, am I required to put a nutrition facts panel on my label? I'm a small brand, I'm just starting out, am I required to have that on there? And the answer is no. There is an exemption by the FDA that if your business has annual sales of $50,000 or less, you are not required to put the nutrition facts panel on your label. There is no additional paperwork that you need to fill out. So you just want to keep records if you were ever questioned, if you're in a grocery store or online, why you don't have the nutrition facts on your label. So then the next question that I get is, should I have the nutrition facts panel? Let's say you're going into a grocery store. So typically, if you're just starting in a farmer's market, I don't feel like it is required. You have that quality relationship that you can communicate with your customers. There are some legalities that I'll talk about in a little bit, that if you do put it on there, you are responsible for it. So that's why I typically recommend, when you're just starting out, not to worry too much about including the nutrition facts panel. So that said, when you start going into a grocery store, so a lot of times people take small steps, right? So farmers market, and then you go into some of your local, smaller, independent grocery stores. So a lot of times those kind of grocery stores are not going to require you to have the nutrition facts panel on there. It's a nice to have, but they're not going to require it. However, I do always like to ask people to put yourself in the shoes of your customers. And depending on your product, the more complex it is, the more a consumer is used to seeing a nutrition facts panel. And so I think if you can include it when you start going into grocery, at least, once you're in a couple, and then you're going to do a label refresh and make sure, a lot of times people will do a label refresh, do maybe some updated branding after they've gotten a little bit of traction. So that's definitely a good time to go ahead and do it. So even though you can get the exemption for quite a while, up to $50,000, I do recommend getting it on there when you start going into grocery stores. just because we do look for it, and it's something that makes us maybe a little bit skeptical, wondering why it's not on your package. What are you hiding, right? So it does kind of depend on the product itself. Like I said, the more complex, if it's a single ingredient, maybe not as big of a deal. But if it's a complex product, then it's going to be more and more important. Also keep in mind that if you make any kind of a health claim on your product, you will need to include the nutrition facts panel. So that exemption would not apply if you are making a claim. And I'm going to talk more about that in just a minute. All right, so let's talk about the biggest mistakes that I see with the nutrition facts panel and where people go wrong. And keep in mind, this is regulated by the FDA. So the FDA has quite a number of label regulations for you to be in compliance. And they can embargo your product, they can fine you, they can tell you to get your product off of the shelves until you fix it. Sometimes, like I said, they could even quarantine your product. So it is really important that you get this correct. And I have another great video all about label compliance. So be sure to check that video out. But this one, we're really just talking about the nutrition facts panel. So the first mistake I see is that in the old format, it was pretty common for people to shrink the nutrition facts panel down to whatever size needed to fit, so they could get all of their marketing in as well. And the way that it is written now is that your marketing message does not trump the FDA compliance for your nutrition facts panel. So that is not a legitimate reason to not have it correct. Your marketing always comes second to what is required on a label. So you will notice that, for instance, on this package, this is compliant. I know because I did it. And you'll see here that the big differences are the font sizes are much, much larger. The overall box size has a requirement size. And basically what they've done is say that this needs to be a certain font. Everything in here has very specific font sizes. So you can't really cheat it anymore by shrinking it down. It also needs to be super legible. Like you can't have this on a different color where it would be hard to read. Like I couldn't put this on a dark color where it really needs to pop out on a white background. To help you with this problem, now that the label needs to be pretty large and take up a lot of package space, is that they have given you multiple options from a tabular format like this to a linear format. Now, I know from experience that my clients would prefer the tabular format, the table, but given that there's new requirements for all the font sizes, this is an example of the linear label. And this is for, the way that they do it is it's based on your packet, your label size. So you're gonna take a square inch of this, so your height and your width multiplied, and together, and then they have guidelines based on whether you can use this format, this linear format, and then the font sizes. So there's actually one that's even smaller than this, but this is the next size down that you can use when you start dealing with small packages. Think about a hot sauce, right? And so that's super tricky to get all of that on there. And then if your label size is below 12 square inches, then you do have the option of leaving it off as long as you have contact information on how people can find those nutrition facts information on your website. So that's one of the tricks of getting around the hacks around getting around small packaging and small labels. The other way that you can get it to be a little bit smaller is not every nutrient that is included on the kind of base, the foundational nutrition facts panel is required if it is not in your product. So If you don't have any vitamin A in your product or no potassium, and there's a couple of other ones that are not required, they're not mandatory, then there is a way to label it, to list them off in a different way that can save you on some space. But I don't recommend you doing that yourself. I highly recommend that you work with somebody like myself or a nutrition expert who can help you with that, because you want to be super, super careful that you don't take off a mandatory nutrient that could land you in a lot of hot water. The next mistake that I see brands make is that they want to put claims on their package. And a lot of times you don't even realize that you are making a claim when you're putting something like healthy or low in sugar or probiotics or helps build immunity or something like that. I see this often with brands that they're like, this is common knowledge, right? Some things are innocuous, like healthy, but some things are highly regulated by the FDA, and putting them on there will get your business shut down. So be super, super careful with your health claims. I highly recommend, again, that you work with somebody like myself or another label compliance expert to be sure, if you're going to put any claims on there, that they are done correctly. Oftentimes, people don't put the correct evidence or word it in a very specific way that the FDA requires for you to be able to put that claim on there. And I've seen it over and over and over again. So just be super, super careful when you put any kind of claim on there regarding health, right? Something that the nutrition facts panel would back up. So that's the next mistake. Be super careful with claims. And I also would just ask you to think about, like, what does the term natural or healthy even mean when you put that on there? So some claims are just super vague, and I don't think that they really mean anything to our customers. And how would you actually prove that, right? They're kind of hard to prove. And the last mistake is that you are not calculating your nutrition values correctly. So there are programs out there like Recipal where you can do your own calculations. They're only as good as the information that you put in. I think Recipal actually is a great, I've written an article for them as well, but I don't think it's a bad source to get your nutrition facts under a couple of conditions. But if you put bad information in, you're going to get bad information out. And so the first thing that I highly recommend to get better nutrition values is to convert your recipe from a recipe to a formula. And I do have a video here all about turning your recipe into a formula. But so be sure to check that out. But essentially, you want to be taking things to weights and fluid ounces and getting away from teaspoons and tablespoons, which are inaccurate. So that's one piece of it. The other part, if you're going to use a Recipal, is that you want to be sure you are using, if you're using ingredients, you're making something from other ingredients, you're using the actual nutrition facts from that particular brand. And so you want to be really, really careful that you're not just using a generic one, and you're making sure that the nutrition values that you're plugging in actually match with the products that you're using. And then the final piece of that is, when I do recommend that you do send your product out to get verified for nutrition facts, either you want to get it chemically tested or you want to send it to a nutrition facts specialist. There are people who don't necessarily have to test your product, but that can do some better calculations than you can on your own. Is if you're applying like fermentation or heat, things that are gonna like evaporate or boil down. So if you're really transmuting the product from one thing into another, there are sometimes, there could be some nutrition loss that doesn't get calculated when you're just using a program like Recipal. So depending on how complex your recipe is, I might recommend that you go ahead and send it out and get it, that nutrition verified through testing or using an expert to help you with that. If you want more direction on your labels or you want a comprehensive FDA label compliance review, you have to check out Food Business Success. It is my one-stop shop for everything you need to start and grow your packaged food business. Food Business Success includes courses on everything from pricing your product, licenses, scaling up for production, food safety, and of course, your packaging and labels and so much more. Plus, you get coaching from me and getting all your questions answered quickly so you can keep moving forward in your business. You can also pick up a full marketing and FDA compliance label review package over at Food Business Success if you want to be 100% sure that you are compliant and ready to go into any grocery store that you choose. Be sure to check out all the great videos on the Food Business Success YouTube channel. I try to cover as much as possible, all about starting and growing a profitable packaged food business. Please comment below, like this video, and subscribe to this channel, and let's make your food business real.